From unhinged crashes like this to getting banned from Monaco for life, there have been few drivers so dangerous, dreadful, and utterly insane as this. Not only was his driving style reckless to the point of insanity, but his tragic 5 seasons in Formula 1 were funded by a brutal authoritarian regime that bought him a spot on the grid. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Pastor Maldonado. Born on March 9, 1985 in Maracay, Venezuela, Maldonado got his first taste of speed at just 4 years old, racing BMX bikes at a national level. But it wasn't until he was 7 that he first stepped into the world of karting. At a time when much of Venezuela was struggling with poverty, karting wasn't exactly an accessible sport, but that didn't matter to Pastor because his family had money, and lots of it. After competing nationally, he made the move to Europe and set the karting world alight with some painfully mediocre results. But nothing, except maybe some crash barriers, was going to stop Pastor, and in 2003 he made the move to single-seater racing, debuting in the Formula Renault 2000 Masters Series. His performance here was uninspiring to say the least, scoring 0 points and ranking 28th in the championship. But hey, it was his first ever season of single-seater racing, so let's give the guy a chance. And while the bar literally couldn't have been any lower, he did actually improve in his following 2 championships that year, placing 7th in the Formula Renault Italian Series and even winning the Winter Cup. And yeah, it's not exactly the pinnacle of motorsport, but that's not a bad start at all. In 2004, things only got better for the Venezuelan as he won the Italian Formula Renault in convincing fashion with 8 victories and 12 podiums. And you'll never guess what came next. That's right, Formula 1. Well, technically it was just a test session with Minardi, but still, everything was going perfectly for Pastor, and at this rate, it looked like he would be racing F1 cars for real soon enough. But the following year, his season took a dark turn that changed his career and reputation forever. He'd just made the jump to the newly launched Formula Renault 3.5 series, and to be perfectly honest, his performances on track were pretty dismal. But that didn't stop Pastor from making a name for himself, only in the worst way imaginable. During a practice session at the 3rd round of the season in Monaco, Patrick Pilet lost control of his car at Massenet in dramatic fashion. Marshals rushed on track, attempting to remove the red car, and while every other driver with more than 2 brain cells slowed down under the yellow flags, Maldonado had other ideas. That was horrifying. By some miracle, the marshal survived, but he suffered 2 broken vertebrae and was immobilized for over 2 months. This wasn't even the first time Pastor had ignored yellow flags this season, as he had previously crashed during the opening race at Zolder, narrowly missing 2 marshals. But Monaco was different, and the consequences were severe. Maldonado received a 4-race ban from the season and a lifetime ban from ever racing at Monaco. Yeah, that's right, a ban for life. Well, that's how it looked at first, because this incident takes an even darker and far more corrupt twist. You see, Pastor didn't only have a wealthy father backing him, but he also had the weight of Venezuelan politics behind him, as he was a close personal friend of the regime leader, President Hugo Chavez. It was reported that both his father and Chavez pressurized the Automobile Club de Monaco to overturn the lifetime ban, effectively bribing the organization with a sizable fine. It just goes to show that if you have money, the rules don't apply to you. And trust me, this wasn't the last time Pastor used money and political influence to his advantage, but we'll get more into that later. During his 4-race suspension, Pastor dabbled in the Formula 3000 Italian series before he made his return to Formula 3.5 the following season. And all credit to him, he had some strong performances across the year, with 3 wins and 6 podiums. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but one of the races he won was Monaco. But this didn't mean his season was controversy-free. After winning the 6th round of the season in Misano, Pastor was unceremoniously disqualified for a technical infringement on his car. He lost 15 points as a result, and this would ultimately cost him the Formula 3.5 championship. Anyways, his strong performances that season saw him land a seat with Trident Racing to compete in the 2007 GP2 season, the final step before reaching Formula 1. So this was it, Pastor's chance to prove himself worthy of joining the big leagues. And what does he do? He stalled on the grid and couldn't even start the race. The rest of his season was pretty patchy, with some massive crashes not exactly helping his reputation.
Wait and see. There's Maldonado going off. Struggling in turn 6, but yeah.
But he did have a few standout performances, even winning a race, and you'll never guess which one. How he managed to win in Monaco 2 years in a row, I'll never know. Anyways, his season was ultimately cut short when he proved his crashing skills weren't limited to cars, as he had an accident on his bicycle during training and broke his collarbone, sidelining him for the final 4 rounds of the season. In 2008, he returned to GP2, this time racing for Prix Sports. And to be fair, he had a much stronger season, placing 5th in the championship with 5 podiums and another win. But don't think for one second that his season was accident-free. You just have to look at his performance at Silverstone. He started off by stalling on the grid, followed by a penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Then he got another penalty for ignoring yellow flags. And to top it all off, he crashed into 2 cars on the final lap.
Pastor Maldonado in a nice scrape again there, and
I don't even have the words. In 2009, he joined ART Grand Prix, got off to a great start, with 2 wins in the first half of the season. But things only went downhill from here, as he spent the rest of the season struggling to keep his car on track in classic Maldonado fashion. Ultimately, the season was won by his more talented teammate Nico Hülkenberg, while Pastor finished the year floundering around in 6th. But 2010 was different, and dare I say, Pastor actually looked like a force to be reckoned with on track. Well, for the most part. Still, he secured a record 6 back-to-back feature race wins and claimed the GP2 championship in commanding fashion. Was this it? Had Pastor finally done enough to earn a seat in Formula 1? To put it bluntly, no. His talent alone wasn't turning any heads in the Formula 1 paddock, and crashing out in the final 2 races of his season didn't exactly help his case. But Pastor was going to get into F1 one way or another, and this is where things take an even darker turn.
Lo mismo pasa con Pastor Maldonado, mire, estamos en problemas porque con otro corredor, pero quien lo apoya es un multimillonario y ese es un platero. ¿Y de dónde saco yo esa plata? ¿Usted me puede ayudar? Entonces llamé a PDVSA y ahora Pastor va a correr con PDVSA Venezuela.
And just like that, Pastor became a Formula 1 driver. But he wasn't only carrying the Venezuelan flag into the sport, he was also carrying the shadow of Hugo Chávez's regime. With Chávez's influence, the state-run oil company, PDVSA, bankrolled Maldonado's move into Formula 1. But for Chávez, this was never just about racing. His government had been under heavy scrutiny, with riots and unrest spreading across Venezuela. And in his mind, Pastor's success on track would become his own, serving as a political trophy meant to bolster his public image. So, not only did Pastor buy his way into Formula 1, but he also became the mascot of an authoritarian regime in the process. But which F1 team would sign such a controversial figure? Well, after spending several seasons struggling to fight for points, Williams had little choice. They were in desperate need of cash, and the Chávez money offered them a lifetime. And so, Pastor was signed for the 2011 season, partnering with veteran driver Rubens Barrichello. The opening round of the season in Australia probably wasn't what Pastor had in mind when he dreamed of racing in F1. He qualified down in 15th, which, to be fair, could have been worse, but the Williams proved to be shockingly hard to drive, lacking the pace needed to even fight in the midfield, and on race day both he and Barrichello retired when their transmissions decided they didn't want to live anymore. Talk about a rough start. The rest of the season wasn't much better, with reliability issues plaguing the Williams, and if the car somehow didn't blow up, Pastor usually found a way to spice things up. In Canada, he hit Rosberg's front wing, before he later lost control on the pit exit, spinning off of the track, and in Abu Dhabi, he got a 30-second time penalty for ignoring blue flags. Even when Pastor scored his first and only point of the season in Belgium, it was overshadowed by this qualifying incident with Lewis Hamilton.
I've just been hit.
Lotus, is there much damage to the car?
That was done deliberately.
Purposefully driving into another driver? Now that's another level, and even Hamilton was bemused by his antics.
What happened between yourself and Pastor Maldonado?
I had to look at it afterwards, but I think I saw Maldonado approaching quite quickly. And anyways, but he came around me, and I didn't move anywhere, but happened to swipe across me. I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but I guess we'll see shortly.
It wasn't his first tangle with the Brits either, as earlier on in the season, he found out the hard way what the Monaco crash barriers taste like. Across the entire season, Williams only scored 5 points, placing them 9th in the championship, their worst result ever. They hadn't exactly been helped by the fact that in 19 race weekends, Pastor had an incident at 11 of them. From spinning into the barriers to beaching his car, you name it, Pastor did it. But nobody, and I mean nobody, expected what he did the following season. The year was 2012, and Pastor was back for a second season, this time partnered with Bruno Senna. Combined with a new Renault engine, hope was running high at the Oxfordshire-based team, and why wouldn't it be? It's not like things could get much worse. At the first outing in Australia, Pastor actually showed some decent pace, qualifying 8th, somehow keeping his car out of the barriers. But by now, you know Pastor, and whenever he's on track, chaos isn't far behind. And on lap 2 of the race, he did this to Grosjean.
Pastor Maldonado on Romain Grosjean, and they make contact, and that's Grosjean going off in the Lotus, and he's got damage to that front right tyre.
But it doesn't stop there. Oh no. With just 1 lap to go, Pastor was battling Alonso for 5th place, but out of literally nowhere, his race ended in the most Maldonado way possible.
India. Oh, we've got a Williams off. That's got to be Pastor Maldonado then, and his race ends on the final lap after such a thrilling battle with Fernando Alonso. He looks like he's hit the wall there and made contact.
He retired from the following 2 races, with an engine failure in Malaysia, followed by a puncture in Bahrain, but he did score some decent points in China with 8th. As the next race in Spain rolled around, a normal qualifying session was turned upside down when Pastor was seemingly possessed by the spirit of Ayrton Senna himself.
Hamilton's absolutely flying as he watches Maldonado, and he's gone fastest. Maldonado on pole position.
Wow, I'm almost lost for words. I don't think a single person on the planet expected such an epic pole from Pastor, and on Sunday, he took things to a whole nother level.
We have 5 lights on ahead of the drivers, and away we go here in Barcelona. It's a decent start from Maldonado, but Alonso's gaining on him as Maldonado pushes him on almost to the grass. But there's Fernando Alonso into the lead by the time they get into turn 2. You can see Maldonado gaining on him in the background as they make their way up towards turn 9 as Pastor Maldonado comes into pit for Williams.
So now Williams are forcing Ferrari's hand. He was 1.4 behind. This needs to be the outlap of his life.
Raikkonen is the man currently in second place. Alonso is now pitted from first. Out goes that Ferrari there in your screen. You can see the Williams. Pastor Maldonado, who just sets the fastest lap of the race, now gets past Fernando Alonso. It's 750 metres down this main straight. Alonso can now attack Pastor Maldonado down into turn 1. He's a little too far behind to get by on this occasion. But this is now the battle for the lead.
Alonso was struggling for traction coming out of T15 there. Really struggling to get the power down.
Maldonado starting to pull away as Pastor Maldonado makes his way now down towards the chicane and one more corner after it. In 2012, we had 4 from 4. It's now going to be 5 out of 5. Another different winner, a new winner in Formula One. It's Pastor Maldonado ahead of Fernando Alonso. What a victory for Pastor Maldonado and a Williams team that are back on top, and boy are we glad to see it.
Wow. Just wow. Williams celebrated that win like they won the championship. And back home, Pastor was being hailed as a national hero. And credit where credit's due. That was epic. Pastor looked as though he'd been reborn, and all eyes were on him at the next round in Monaco. But it didn't take long for the old Pastor to return. That was pretty much the story for the rest of the season. By the end of the year, Maldonado had only scored points in 5 of the 20 races, crashed in some way or another in 11 of them, and received 14 penalties across the season for his colourful antics. Now, that's not exactly the best record, especially compared to his teammate who scored points in twice as many races. And to top it all off, he even managed to crash during a demonstration at his home country of Venezuela. I don't think it's hard to understand why he was known as the most dangerous driver on the grid. Anyways, Pastor's win in Spain, combined with a few large bags of PDVSA cash, meant he once again retained his seat with Williams for the 2013 season. But this time, he'd be driving alongside rookie Valtteri Bottas. Now, this year was, to put things nicely, pretty abysmal. Pastor started off the first 2 races of the season in typical fashion.
Oh dear, Pastor Maldonado beached and in the gravel. Moment, what happened to Maldonado? Just got on the curb, didn't he? Went far too wide. Pastor Maldonado is out of a race again.
Which was followed by a slew of pointless finishes. Now, to be fair to both drivers, the Williams that year proved to be tragically slow, but Pastor wasn't exactly helping the situation by crashing at every given opportunity, like in Monaco when he treated us to this gem.
You see Chilton there. Oh, goodness. That was with Maldonado, who has gone straight on at to back.
Or better yet, in Spa, when he managed to crash twice in the same corner. Now that takes some real skill. All in all, Williams scraped together just 5 points across the entire season, with Bottas scoring 4 of those thanks to an 8th place finish at the USA Grand Prix, while the single point came courtesy of a 10th place finish by Maldonado at Hungary. So, when Williams finally showed Pastor the door ahead of the 2014 season, I can't say anybody was surprised, and just like that, Pastor's F1 career was over. Right?
Race winner Pastor Maldonado joins Lotus alongside Romain Grosjean, who got 6 podiums for the team last year. This weekend last year, Lotus made the headlines for winning the Australian Grand Prix, but recently it's been their financial problems that have been making the news.
Well, surprise, surprise, Pastor found another financially ruined team to inject the PDVSA money into, only this time it was Lotus. And driving alongside Pastor was none other than Romain Grosjean. No, I'm not kidding. I don't know what Lotus were thinking, but signing 2 drivers whose specialty was rapidly disintegrating F1 cars didn't seem like the brightest idea. But it does seem like a bright idea to hit that subscribe button. Anyways, sticking to his tradition of kicking the season off in style, Pastor immediately spun out in qualifying, failing to set a lap time in the process. And on race day, both his and Grosjean's engines exploded mid-race, a trend which continued into the following Grand Prix. And in Bahrain, he might have finished the race, but he did his best to make sure Esteban Gutierrez couldn't.
Liking him more than Fernando Alonso.
Ted, that's Esteban Gutierrez and Pastor Maldonado, and coming together down at turn 1, I assume.
Man, I don't even have the words. His on-track gymnastics earned him a stop-and-go penalty, a 5-place grid drop, and 3 super license penalty points. At this rate, Maldonado was racking up more penalties than points. I can't say the rest of the season was much better. At the Chinese Grand Prix, he lost control of his car while trying to make adjustments on his steering wheel, and followed it up with this downright embarrassing crash. I don't even want to know what his mechanics were thinking. In Spain, he binned it before qualifying even got underway. And in the race lost another super license points for this brilliant move.
Front wing from Sebastian Vettel, and talking of taps, there's Pastor Maldonado and Marcus Ericsson.
I'm not even sure how to describe what happened at Spa. And Singapore. Well, that was just classic Pastor. By the end of the season, it actually felt like he was trying to set a record for how many times he could crash in a single year. Even when he did score his only points of the season at the USA Grand Prix, he still managed to get a penalty for speeding behind the safety car. And so, Lotus racked up a mere 10 points across the season, with 8 of them coming from Grosjean, who had thoroughly outclassed him across the entire year. I'm not sure if Pastor had blackmail on the Lotus team principal or something, but somehow he kept his seat for the 2015 season. And this year, the car looked like it might actually have some pace. Lotus had just secured a deal to use Mercedes engines, and if you know anything about the turbo hybrid era, you'll know just how good those engines were. But that didn't really matter, because out of his first 6 races, Pastor retired from 5 of them. Now, were all of these incidents his fault? No. But by now, it was clear that he was nothing more than a mere crash magnet.
Going off into the barrier already is the Lotus of Pastor Maldonado.
He spent the rest of the year either crashing into other drivers, crashing into the wall, or receiving penalties for every infringement under the sun. And in Hungary, he not only did this to Perez,
Now, round the outside goes Perez. Maldonado pushes him a bit wide,
but also received a penalty for overtaking behind the safety car, and then a separate penalty for speeding in the pit lane. This man is just built different, and his move on Jenson Button in Singapore was so bad that the 2009 world champion branded him as mental.
Early, Maldonado in the way. I think that's probably... We've heard the frustration from Jenson on the radio.
Now, for the sake of fairness, I should point out that Pastor had a few decent points finishes across the season, but so did Grosjean, who scored almost double the number of points as him and was less prone to binning it completely out of nowhere. Well, for the most part. And by the end of 2015, it became clear that not even the PDVSA oil money could save him. With so many crashes, so many penalties, and so many moments that I struggle to comprehend to this day, Lotus finally let go of the crash connoisseur at the end of the 2015 season. Across 5 seasons in Formula 1, Pastor was involved in a staggering 78 incidents, whether it was crashing into barriers, ramming into other cars, or breaking every rule the FIA had. He was truly one of a kind. And when asked about his incessant crashing, he claimed it was because, to find the limit, you need to cross the limit. I think I have the big balls to cross the limit every time. Now, I can't help but think after 96 races in F1, he should have found the limit at some point or another. And yes, he might have had his fleeting moment of brilliance, but after spending an estimated $175 million to fund his F1 career, I'm sure the Venezuelan government were hoping for a lot more than a single race win and 76 career points. Just to put it into perspective, he has more incidents in F1 than points. That's just crazy. And when you have a reputation like Pastor, it's not hard to see how he earned his legendary nickname, Crash Tour. And if you want to see an F1 driver who was somehow even worse than Pastor, check out this video on Nikita Mazepin, because his antics are truly next level.